Sunrise, it's Andrew here with your small group questions for this week as we look at Genesis chapter 34. Now, this is a very difficult chapter to work through. Again, as you look at the history of interpretation on this text, everyone goes in completely different directions. But we want to look at what the text itself says. So as you come to group this week and as you hear the sermon, I want you to spend a lot of time reading the text and kind of looking at the big picture of what we've seen take place in Genesis and what we're going to see happen over the coming weeks in Genesis, and even a little bit thinking through the big picture of Scripture as a whole. Again, important things to look at when interpreting Scripture. So as we look at this text, what is the overarching main point of this text? Why does Genesis 34 here? Why does God want us to know about this event in the history of the family of Israel? What are some key things that transpire here that are important to their history, both in the positive and the negative, if there really is any positive as you work through the text? So what is this text teaching us in that way? And so as you work through the text, what do you make of our main characters? What do you make of Dinah? What do you make of Jacob? What do you make of the brothers? How do you see them play out in our text? Again, how do you see Shechem, Hamor, the people of the land? What are we seeing take place in these characters? What is the reality of who they are? And so as you work through some of the specific things taking place, one of the first things you have after the event, after the rape takes place, you then have the brothers' response when they hear it, that these things should not take place in Israel. What do you take from their response compared to Jacob's response? What is the comparison between them? And then the offer to marry her, the offer from Shechem to marry her. What do we make of his intentions through this whole thing, especially compared to how he then presents that offer to his own people, how he's presenting what's taking place? So what are some of the things, again, that begin to stand out in this text of interactions that we see between Israel and the Canaanites? What are some of the things that you're picking up on as you read their interactions? What do you make of the son's deceit? That the text is very clear that they deceive the people because of the actions taken against their sister. What's the importance of that? And how do we see the necessity to some degree of that based on the end? Because again, one of the things that we'll see as we get to the end of the text is that Shechem still has Dinah. So she's still in his custody in his home. So how does that play into the interactions that we see throughout this text? Does it change the interactions that take place? And into that, as you read it, how does the abuse of the covenant sign come into play here with the brothers' plan? And also into it, Jacob's passivity with going along with it, not knowing that they had an ulterior motive. Ultimately, we see this picture of the merging of the people of Israel with this town, with Shechem. What does that teach us about what's going on here? Again, how does that fit within God's covenant warnings? Again, getting this picture of what's going on in the people of Israel. So what do you make of that? What, again, stands out in Hamor's speech to his people about taking, that ultimately the people of Israel will become their own people and they will possess their possessions. Again, we're seeing some things here that are contrary to what we've seen God say. And so we're going to work through that text. What do you make of these speeches? What do you make of the people? And again, so as we bring this to a conclusion, what do you make of the brothers' murder? What do you make of their decision to kill them? What do you make of Jacob's response? That they are now a stench in that his fear. And a little hint you're going to see in the next chapter, the result of this is actually quite the opposite of Jacob's fears, because God is at work. And then lastly, as you begin to put this all together and begin to work through some of the important parts of this text, I want to just take a moment and really highlight this transition. So this is the text that transitions our focus a little bit away from Jacob, beginning to focus on his kids and their future. So we're going to begin to see that transition to From Jacob to Israel, the people of God, the children of God, the fathers of the nations. So we get 2 of them here. Again, we'll begin to unpack some of the others as we go along. So I hope you spend some time in the text, again, hearing it proclaimed on Sunday, working through, again, the mess that is this text, and again, seeing God at work even through the mess. Ultimately, we see later, and again, some of the parallels that shows us in the future of Israel taking the land in Exodus and the rest of the Torah. We spend some time in this text. Can't wait to see you guys on Sunday to hear the word proclaimed and again, and discuss these things.